A treatise on suits in Chancery, setting forth the principles, pleadings, practice, proofs, and processes of the jurisprudence of equity, and giving numerous illustrative forms of pleadings, writs, orders, reports, decrees, and other proceedings in suit in Chancery from their beginning to their ending. Interesting. This is by Henry Gibson. Let's go over here. Let's go to part 1 really quick. This is very interesting. Check this out, right? Okay. So Article 1, see, Chance records its history, jurisdiction, and principles. The history of the Chancery Court. Article 1, the origin and evolution of equity jurisprudence. Article 2, the history of the Chancery Court of Tennessee. So, 1. The civil law, its development. The system of jurisprudence called equity was originally largely derived from the civil law of the Romans, and its early development in England was similar to the development of the analogous system in the jurisprudence of Rome. Therefore, in endeavoring to trace the origin of the Chancery Court, it may be well noticed briefly the development of the civil law. The early laws of Rome, like old common law of England, were exceedingly stern. They were rigid, formal, and arbitrary, paying little attention to abstract right and justice. Their judicial proceedings were technical to the last degree. Absolute accuracy was required in complying with the established phrases and acts in the enforcement of civil rights. Any omission or mistake of a word or a movement was fatal. That's messed up. As civilization, however, progressed in Rome, subtle technicalities gave way to simpler methods of pleadings. But even then, it was found that cases occasionally arose to which the improved formulas were inadequate. Those extraordinary cases were decided by the praetor without being referred to the ordinary tribunal, and without being hampered by any technical requirements as to the proper formula or kind of action, he himself determining both the law and the facts of the case. The complainant stated the facts of his case, the defendant set up his defense. The praetor decided. Okay, so praetor is like the magistrate. This extraordinary method of determining suits, so simple, so free from technicalities, so easily molded to the exigencies of every case, was found so superior to even the improved formulas that eventually it superseded them and became the only mode of procedure. Much as in many of the states of England and in England, the procedure by bill and answer has supplanted the rigid formulas of the common law actions. Not only were the pleadings thus simplified by the Roman jurists, but the laws were correspondingly improved, and a deliberate and persistent effort was made to bring their jurisprudence into perfect harmony with an absolutely impartial equity that should do equal and perfect justice to all, and thus was perfected that system of jurisprudence known as the civil law, from which are derived many of the maxims, principles, and doctrines of equity now followed and enforced in the Chancery courts. 2. Evolution of equity in England. The development of the extraordinary jurisdiction of the Chancery Court in England was similar, in its causes, progress, and results, to the development of the system of equity in the Roman laws. As already intimated, in England the king was regarded as the fountain of justice, and when any person conceived that he had been wronged, either in court or out of court, He had the privilege of petitioning the king for redress. The king, being unable to hear and determine all of these complaints because of their number and complexity, generally referred them to his chief secretary, who was called his chancellor. This officer was an ecclesiastic trained in law and theology of Rome. He was well studied and was sometimes called the keeper of the king's conscience. When thus directed to adjudicate the rights and determine the remedies of those petitioning the king for justice, the chancellor naturally had recourse to the civil law of Rome, being most familiar therewith, and also finding therein a diviner sort of justice and a simpler and more efficient form of procedure. Besides these chancellors, who were generally very able and very learned men, were no doubt disposed to regard the English common law as barbarous codes compared with the Roman civil law. The chancellor's office was one of great trust and confidence. There you go, interesting. He was the king's advisor and confidant, the chief member of his council, and the keeper of his great seal of state. He is spoken of at a very, very early day as one who annuls unjust laws and executes the commands of the pious prince, and puts an end to what is injurious to the people or to morals. Interesting, huh? Yeah, I can go on, but see right here. Chancellors were ecclesiastics, generally bishops or archbishops, accounts for and explains various words and phrases found in the old forms of bills, such as orator, one who prays; 2. Doing contrary to conscience, the bishop being bound to act according to the conscience. The bishop being bound to act to the conscience and being also the keeper of the king's conscience. And 3. But anyway, as you can see, just wanted to share a little bit something with you guys, get you a little interested in suits and chancery. It's a lot of interesting stuff, honestly. A lot of interesting stuff. But anyway, you guys can look it up. Let me show you one more time. Here you go. Peace.